So welcome back to this week's self-care class. So we're still talking about coping skills, and for a while we were talking about unhealthy ones. So this week we are talking about healthy coping skills. So just a quick review. This is from our first introduction to coping skills. So if you don't want to if you want to skip this part, the activities will be at the end, or if you want a little review on what coping skills are, just stick with this in the beginning. So coping skills. So we cope with stressors every day, often without even realizing it. When we cope with stressful events, even if it's a simple daily task, it is vitally important that we use healthy, effective coping skills. So, and this is from this next explanation is from a therapist who's a blogger. So these are not my words, just letting you know. So I like to think of coping skills as a tool belt of sorts. So when you're building something, you likely need more than one tool. You'll probably need a hammer, a screwdriver, maybe even a wrench or measuring tape. Coping skills work the same way. So as you build your tool belt and expand your methods of coping, you'll start to learn which techniques are best for you in which situations. So I think we talked about how one coping skill might not work the best with something you're dealing with over another. So it's just you kind of have to play around and see which ones work, which ones don't, and just keep those in mind. So how do I know which coping skills will work for me? So it's important to understand that coping skills look differently for different people and works differently based on situation and circumstances. So what works for your friend or your neighbor might not work for you, and vice versa. So again, not only there's different coping skills that will work with different stressors you're dealing with, you also have to remember that it'll be different for everyone. So for example, someone might really say meditation is perfect. It helps them with their anger, their anxiety, and it's great. They use that a lot. But maybe to you, maybe you don't do meditation is hard because you just can't quiet your mind. And your mind just starts drifting, or you get frustrated because you can't concentrate on your breathing. So meditation might not work for you. So that's an example of a coping skill that could work for one person, but isn't really is as effective as for you. So developing a group of effective coping skills may mean learning more about yourself and getting curious about what helps you and what doesn't. So it's definitely more of a trial and error. So you kind of have to test in situations that are not as stressful. So often we have to go through some trial and error to figure out which coping skills work best for us. This can mean exploring lots of different ways of dealing with various situations and holding on to the ones that work and throwing out the ones that don't. It also means testing our new coping skills in less intense situations before testing them out in more intense situations. So meaning if something gives you a little bit of stress, it's probably better to test out a new coping skill in that situation than something that really stresses you out to the point where you're getting anxiety or you're having panic attacks. So probably not a good idea to test a new coping skill out in that situation, if that makes sense. So how to develop coping skills. So look at how you effectively cope with stressors and effective ways others cope with stressors. So kind of just, again, that trial and error, and also look at others or get others' advice of what type of coping skills they use for stressors. But even if you're asking other people, just keep in mind it might not work for you. So just when you're testing that out, just keep that in mind. So make a list of effective coping skills that you could do in response to particular stressors. Choose some effective coping skills that you could realistically employ. So meaning you have to be realistic. If you say, I'm going to meditate every time I have anxiety, and you find it hard to remember to do that, then maybe